Yo, 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 poop shoot, what is up? Welcome to the final Bill 69 installment. For now. This post of the most recent trio of games we defeated was, I originally blogged about this back on February 24th of this past year, 2020, or this current year, I guess. And it's been our only post of 2020 so far, and it could be our only post of 2020 in general. Who knows where all this is going, right? So, and like I've said before, that was our last time playing together, was when we finished this last set of games. We haven't even started what our first game of the next three are going to be. So we got to get through all this COVID stuff before we can even get some games going, and then we got to beat three. So whether we'll see another Bill 69 post in 2020 or not is totally up in the air. But that being said, we still have this one last one, and it is a really, really good one. It features a classic game we always played as kids and that we love, one of our favorites. A game that I've known about for a long time, never had when I was a kid, but finally got to play, and is a huge part of a huge franchise that I've always enjoyed since I was a kid. And then a third game that we never knew about up until recently when we started this Bill 69 quest, and we were looking for other games to beat other than the ones we've already played, throughout the years. And it ended up being on all these top 10 hidden gems on the NES list, so we figured we would play it. So, the first one of this bunch is one that I've known about for quite a long time but never got a chance to play, and is one of my favorite franchises of all time. It was released for the NES in 1991 by Taxan, who isn't a company I really know anything about. I don't have any of their games, and I don't have this one either because Civ downloaded on his machine. I've known about it for quite a few years. I've priced it out on eBay over the years, and it always seems to be a little outside my price range. I hesitate to spend too much on an old Nintendo cartridge because there's just, with my machine being old and works when it wants to, doesn't when it doesn't want to, and with the cartridges being so old and finicky, I don't want to spend too much on a cartridge just to get it and have it not work, right? So fortunately, Civ got it on his machine, and the game in question is called G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. Back in the day, I was a massive G.I. Joe fan. That of all the toy lines I had as a kid, G.I. Joe was probably the one I had most extensively. It was the one that was kind of my go-to. And of course, I still love it to this day. Some of my comic book posts, you'll see G.I. Joe stuff in there. So playing this game was a no-brainer. For some reason, it slipped my notice back in the day when it was first released. For some reason, because, in the early 90s I was still way into G.I. Joe, and you think I would have picked up on that, but for some reason it never came to my attention. But I noticed it not long after that when I started looking at older games to acquire, and it's been on my list for many years to get, but like I said, I just couldn't find it at the price point I wanted. But anyways, this game is there's nothing special about the plot. It's a classic G.I. Joe tale. G.I. Joe Brass has noticed Cobra all over the world getting up to various activities, and they're like, okay, they're up to something's brewing. We got to mobilize our forces and get these guys put down as soon as possible. So General Hawk assembles a team of the best Joes, and they go out into the fray and battle the forces of Cobra. So this game takes place over 6 locations, and each location, for the most part, is divided up into 3 separate levels. The format for the levels it's just a regular platforming level as you approach the Cobra facility in any given location. The middle level, the second level, is you're inside the facility, and it's a timed level, and it's kind of a maze, and you have to find, much like in that game for the Genesis, Crackdown, where you had to find the X's to put the bombs. You have to plant a number of bombs throughout the facility to blow it up, and you have a certain amount of time within which to do so, and that's probably the hardest part of the game. Then the third level of each mission is you exiting the facility as it's about to blow, and then facing the boss for that level. This is the format for all levels except the last one, the 6th level. The 6th level is missing the first part where you approach the facility. It just starts with the bomb part, and it's all one level. It doesn't even divide it into two. You do the bombs, and then you face the boss. So in these levels, the locations are it's the Amazon, then it's Antarctica, then it's New York, then it's the South Dakota mountains, then it's I'll get it, the Sahara Desert, and then it's Cobra Island. So you have to make your way through these 6 locations, defeat the boss before you can move on to the next one. And the bosses in each of the levels are, there's a Range Viper, then Metalhead, Overlord and Dictator, then Voltar, and then of course Destro, and then of course Cobra Commander as the last one. And he's pretty tough. And the as you set out before each level, it's cool because General Hawk will assign the lead for each mission. So you don't have a choice about your leader for the mission, but then you can fill 2 more slots with whichever Joes you want. So you have a total of 3 guys in each level that you can freely switch between, depending on the circumstances. They're all rated for different categories, like some are better jumpers, some are more powerful weapons, and that sort of thing. So depending on the makeup of the level and the type of enemies and terrain you're facing, you're going to want to stock your team with the appropriate guys. As you're going through each level, there's a good handful of pickups to be on the lookout for. There's 2 icons. One is a bullet, one is a K, and these come in 2 different forms, so just a regular one of each or a flashing one of each. The bullets increase your ammo capacity, or your ammo stores. The non-flashing one just by a little bit, and then the flashing one by a substantial amount, and then same for the K, which replenishes your health. So the non-flashing one gives you a bit more health back on your health meter, whereas the flashing one gives you a bigger boost. There's also an icon with chevrons on it, which increases the overall length of your health bar, which that one's a really key pickup to get. Then there's a like a vest, bulletproof vest sort of thing, which gives you temporary invulnerability. And then there is one with the icon of a gun on it, and that one increases the level of your weapon, so it makes it more powerful. And there's quite a few stages you can go through. And so as we went through each level, we found kind of the character in each level that became the most important, primarily for the boss, because the bosses are usually pretty hard, but also for throughout the levels. So in our intent with each one was to keep that guy alive and give him all the gun upgrades until his gun was maxed, because then that just made defeating the boss that much easier. So then you just you make your way through all the levels, make use of all the pickups, and defeat the 6 bosses, and you're a real American hero. And knowing is half the battle, as they say, right? So you got to know how to play this game. It's a hard game, especially that middle level where it's a maze and you got to get all the bombs planted within the time limit. That is probably the hardest overall part of the game. There's a couple of bosses that are really difficult as well, but mostly I'd rather face a boss than that mazy bomb level, because every part of the maze looks so similar to the other parts that you really have to play it a number of times before you're like, okay, I think I finally have this maze figured out, right? So this game, considering it was released by a company I have never heard of, they did a really good job with it. Graphics were good, gameplay was good, sound was good, and the only thing that was kind of weird was some of the Joes that they picked. Like Hawk was in it. You can't play with him right off the bat. He's only available in the 6th and final level against Cobra Commander, but he does enter the fray at the end. But there's also Duke, Snake Eyes, Rock and Roll. Those are 3 classic guys. But then there's also Blizzard. He's a snow type guy, which I'd never heard of him before. You would have thought they would have picked like Snow Job or even Frostbite or Alpine or somebody like that to be their snow guy. And then the other guy was Captain Gridiron, who, like, I know of him, but you think they could have gone with Gung Ho or Roadblock or Scarlet. Excuse me, somebody like that. So there was a couple characters in there that I thought, you know what, they're only giving you 5 to 6 guys to play with in this game. You think they would have made them all pretty classic characters, right? Some of those originals, but they went off the board with a couple of guys, which I guess in its own way is kind of cool, but also kind of like, I would have really liked it if they'd given you the full G.I. Joe roster. Like, that would have been a lot of characters to pick from, but it also would have been pretty goddamn awesome too. So anyways, but that's it. Really good game, super fun to play, but just be prepared for a challenge. Second game. This was the game that was a classic staple, one of our favorites of all time as kids. And it is a follow-up to one of the games I recently vlogged about in one of our other posts. And it was released on the NES in 1989 by Acclaim, who is, after Capcom and Konami, Acclaim's going to be one of the next ones that are in the running for the third spot. They make some really good games, and they're continuing to do it to this day, and I really like that company. They make good stuff. They actually took the game over from the company that released the first installment, but I thought they made some really good improvements and kept the series going in a nice kind of fresh way without making too many changes. And the game in question is Double Dragon 2: The Revenge. The plot for Double Dragon 2 is very similar to the first one, with a couple of major differences, I guess. The Shadow Warriors, the group of thugs that kidnapped Marion in the first game, they're out to do the same thing again, except instead of kidnap her, this time they kill her. She's dead. So Billy Lee, of course, is like, ah! The other major difference is that after the first game, in the battle in the end, Jimmy Lee, his brother, has seen the error of his ways and has now joined Billy on his quest for vengeance. So this game, the biggest change they made in this game, and easily the best thing they could have done in terms of making changes to make the game better, is they made it 2-player. And oh my god, is this game fun. So, you set out into another Double Dragon adventure worth 9 levels, and you're basically tasked with taking down the Shadow Warriors once again, and instead of rescuing Marion, just beating down the chump who did this to you and killed your beloved girlfriend, and just reveling in all the beatdowns along the way. So like I said, there's 9 levels, and let's see. I like to test my brain as I get older and into my 40s because I'm so goddamn stupid anymore. I can't remember a thing, so it's fun to see how long it takes to recall 9 different locations, right? So the levels are called Into the Turf, At the Helipad, or Heliport, something like that, Battle in the Chopper, Undersea Base, Forest of Death, Mansion of Terror, Trap Room, The Double Illusion, and Final Confrontation. So those are the 9 areas that you have to go, 9 levels, I guess. They're different areas of, the city and the outlying regions and stuff like that. Of course, the helipad, in a chopper, in an undersea base. So there's all these weird different locations. They really varied the gameplay in this one. Double Dragon 1 was awesome, but it was mostly a straight line through regular type of environments. But like, for example, the third level in this game, Battle in the Chopper, it's just this tiny little room. You're inside a helicopter, and the door opens every so often. And if you're like lying on the ground or too close to it, it'll suck you out, and there's a man lost right there, right? So that sucks. But at the same time, if you get your enemies on the other side of you and knock them down right before that door is open, it's a super easy way to get rid of your enemies in a hurry without losing much health, right? So that was a really cool level. Trap Room was really neat because there wasn't really many enemies in it. It was just all these contraptions and weird gizmos that wanted to send you plunging onto a bed of spikes and stuff like that you just had to really navigate these pitfalls and stuff. So there was a lot of varied gameplay, and this huge machine that looked like almost a giant bulldozer that had like this Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of boss that came out of the top of it after you climbed it and defeated all the other guys that were on it. So they really made a lot of different kind of looks and feels and things to do in this game compared to the first one. And then in terms of gameplay, there was a couple of differences there too. You didn't gain new moves with points in this one. You had all your moves from the start, and the moves are different in this game in terms of how they're set up. So you can do the same things as normal. You can kick, punch, jump kick, grab and throw, but the buttons are relative to which side of your enemy you're on. So depending on if you're the left or the right, the buttons will change. Like the kick, if the kick button when you're on the left side of the enemy will become the punch button when you're on the right side. So it's kind of weird at first, but after a while it becomes, oh, okay, I get it. Like it's just something you have to get adjusted to, it was kind of weird, but it is what it is, and it doesn't take long to become accustomed to. And then the other thing is that, like I said, you don't gain these extra moves with the point totals that you get. You're given all your moves right from the get-go, and the only 2 special moves you have, which are very hard to pull off, is there's this kind of spinning hurricane kick you do that will just launch everybody across the screen. Like I said, it's hard to pull off. The controls on it are tough to engage every time, but when it works, it is worth it. And then the other one is even harder to pull off, and it's like this flying knee that just sends people like it's so funny. If you've ever played Super Spike V-Ball, when you get the super spike and you hit guys and they go fly into the back of the screen, it's kind of like that. You knee the guy and he just goes launching across the screen, which is good for your progress through the game, but also good for a bunch of laughs as well. So there's no pickups in the game. Your health is your health. You got once you lose it, it's gone. The only things you can pick up is just environmental objects that you can use as weapons. There's similar items to the first game. There's knives and pipes and whips and stuff like that you can use to you bring your enemies down a little sooner and easier than usual, but which can also be used reverse and do you greater damage as well. So so if you and your buddy team up and get through the 9 stages, defeat all the bosses, you've done it. You've beaten Double Dragon 2 and had your ultimate revenge for your beloved Marion. So this game it is so fun 2-player. It's fun 1-player, of course. It's a great game, but when you're playing 2-player and you're making your way through such a good-looking, fun, cartoon, violent type of game, it is so much fun. And me and Simon, we didn't only beat the game recently for this, but we'd beaten it a couple years ago as well because we were like, we have to play this. Like, it's just one of those games that, again, every time you're together, you almost want to play it, right? It's so much fun. So that was the second game in this series. So as you can see, that's 2 really cool games to start. The third game, the one we didn't have any idea ever existed before, was one that Simon found on, like I said, a top 10 hidden gems on the NES kind of list. And it was released by Sunsoft in the year 1990 for the NES. And Sunsoft, to me, has a real... I wouldn't say they're one of the best developers out there because they just don't have enough games for me to be in the running against Capcom and Konami and stuff like that. But they have a few games that I really, really like, and then arguably my favorite game of all time on the NES. Not just it's for the NES, but it's my favorite game of all time amongst any games. I'm not going to say what it is because it's hopefully soon going to be seeing this Bill 69 list. Hopefully near the end because I'd like to cap everything off with a victory on that game. But the game that they made that's one of my favorites of all time, if not my absolute favorite, is so much fun. And well, you'll hear about that at some point in the probably distant future. But this game that they released, never heard of until Simon found it on this list, and it is called Journey to Silius. The fanfare behind this game was that it was originally supposed to be developed to be a game based on 1984's The Terminator movie, but I think it was because of licensing rights and stuff like that, it fell through and they weren't able to do it, so they had to give it like a cosmetic and plot makeover and release it eventually under this other name called Journey to Silius. The plot behind it is that you control a young man named Jay McRae, and his humanity on Earth has kind of outlived the planet. They need to expand to the stars because there's not enough resources and such. So Jay's father, who is a scientist, creates this outer space kind of biosphere where people can live, and but one day it is blown to bits in outer space in the Silius system where it was located. And as Jay is going through his father's office afterwards, he finds that this was actually a terrorist plot that destroyed the station and killed his father, and as well as a ton of other people, of course. So Jay, armed with his trusty blaster, then goes to set to work. It's another quest of vengeance, just like Double Dragon 2, The Revenge. You're going out for blood. You don't care why it happened or how it happened. You just want to find out who did it and destroy them. So the game consists of 5 levels. You start out in the ruined ashes of this biosphere or whatever, this city, and then you progress towards the enemy's base. So you get to their base on their ships, in their hangar and stuff like that before you confront the ultimate evil behind this plot. Jay, the controls are very simple, almost like Contra. Like there's jump, there's duck, there's shoot. That's all there is to it. And as you make your way through the game, the robots or the enemies are mostly robotic in nature. They're very difficult. It's one of those games where the levels kind of reset. They're always the same. So you have to You just have to memorize, kind of like Ninja Gaiden. That's a good example. You know an enemy's coming here and how he needs to be destroyed, so you just memorize each thing, because this is one of those games where you don't have a lot of chances, you don't have a lot of lives and continues, and the game is really hard. So you have to memorize every little bit of every level and make sure you just have a really good run to get through it and get to the next level. And as you defeat each level, you will face a boss, of course. The first one is like this helicopter that drops these weird little mechanical jumping things, almost like a cross between a rabbit and a cricket sort of thing. The next one is this enemy that looks like it's half of a tank and half Veritech fighter. Like if you've ever watched Robotech and the Veritech fighter planes that transformed into like big mech robots, it looks like a cross between that. The third one is just this big base that's bristling with lasers and rockets and stuff like that and blasters. The fourth one is a very cool mashup between a huge cannon and this alien that looks like a super big xenomorph from the Aliens series. And then in the final level, the fifth level, you face it's kind of like three bosses. You face this colony ship that comes at you in two different phases. And then in the end, after you defeat the colony ship, you have to face the ultimate evil guy who's behind this plot. And then if you're able to do that, you've won the game. So there's only 2 pickups you can get during the game. Blue orbs give you refill your ammo gauge to some degree, and red orbs refill your health bar to some degree. They don't give you a lot, but they give you some. The ammo pickups are a lot more prevalent than the health pickups. The health pickups don't come along that often. And as you go through the game and you get these pickups, you don't need the ammo for Jay's regular blaster. That one's unlimited, but you can gain upgraded weapons that you can switch to through as the game moves on. So you can get a machine gun, a shotgun, a laser rifle, a homing missile, and a grenade launcher. They share the ammo pool between all 5 of those extra weapons. So you really have to be careful about when you use them and make sure that you make the hits and don't waste them. It's really key to find out which weapons work best on which enemies. Most of the regular enemies you can dispatch easily enough with Jay's regular blaster, but there's some in the game that take a lot of shots on his regular blaster, including bosses. So you have to really save your ammo until it's the right time and make sure you're using the right weapon on the right enemy. That'll make your journey through the journey to Silius so much easier. So yeah, you face down those 5 levels, those 5 bosses, and you have gained your vengeance and in the name of your father, and put this terrorist organization out of business, and defeated one of the harder games that we've had to play in a while. So it's a difficult game, but it is awesome. It looks great, sounds great, plays great. It's just hard as hell. So Sunsoft, I don't have many other games, like I said, but the few that I do are really good, and not including the one that's one of my favorites of all time. And this is just another one to kind of solidify my opinion of them. Although they don't have an extensive library, if they had a lot more games, I think they would be right up there with the Konamis and the Capcoms in terms of one of the best developers of all time, sort of thing. So anyways, that is the 3 games which we originally posted about in late February of this year. So like I said, we haven't even started the first game of the next 3 we're going to beat, and we don't know how long we're all going to be forced to stay at home because of this COVID nonsense. So I don't honestly know when to even estimate we're going to have something next, but rest assured, as soon as we're able to get back to regular business, we're probably going to get at it pretty hard, because we're both going to be hankering for some video game nights. So until then, enjoy these first 13. So that's 13, 26, that's 39 games down. So we're well over halfway to our ultimate goal. So we're on the back 9 of this journey, but there's still quite a few games to go. So yeah, so stay tuned for future posts, future posts, and but rest assured that I will eventually get them whenever we are able to. So until then, have a great sunny day.